Hello everyone! Welcome to a WWE pay-per-view review from the CC Network. I'm Fred, your ever-reliable host as always, and today we're looking at SmackDown's Elimination Chamber pay-per-view held this past Sunday at the Talking Stick Resort Arena in Phoenix, Arizona. Now, last time this event was held in 2015, it got a 4.5 out of 10 from me, which is just below average. And the fact is, after a year-long hiatus, could this event, under the blue brand of SmackDown, prove to have all the twists and turns we would expect from a pay-per-view which is the first toll on the road to WrestleMania? Well, we're going to have to find out, won't we? And there was one match on the pre-show with Mojo Rawley defeating Kurt Hawkins in a basic standard match. Nothing you have to go out and see. It was just, well, what you'd expect from Mojo Rawley and Kurt Hawkins, really. Nonetheless, everyone, let's crack on with the review. Surprisingly, ladies and gentlemen, we kick things off with a women's grudge match as Becky Lynch defeated Mickie James in 11 minutes and 34 seconds off a jackknife cover to secure a much-needed victory for the Last Kicker. Now, having this kick off the show, for me, was quite a bemusing decision, considering it was an intense yet map-based affair, which was something that I didn't expect would kick the crowd into high gear to kick the show off following all that pyro. And the thing is, the match was surprisingly, considering the story, not as intense or as aggressive as I was expecting it to. I thought Becky would go right out the gate and maul Mickie, and Mickie would, squirrel out with a win kind of thing, like a cheating heel would do. However, that didn't happen, which was very disappointing. However, most of what the match did regardless was pretty solid. The storytelling was simple yet well done, with Mickie targeting the arm of Becky for most of the contest to ensure the disarmer was not in and keep the Last Kicker grounded, which worked well in conjunction with the false finishes later on, creating some drama and antagonism which Mickie sold to brilliant effect, and had a balanced sense of momentum throughout, shifting periodically with Mickie retaining control of offense while allowing Becky to show her endurance and allow the face crowd to pop hugely. Now, the match was fine, but I felt the crowd remained quiet considering Mickie had prolonged map-based offense, and it was only in the last 5 minutes that they really perked up to allow Becky to come and fight back and have all those near falls and hard-hitting moves coming in as both women swung for the fences. And the thing is, it went for the right amount of time. I just wish not only it was faster, but also that Mickie won. And I understand her putting over new talent is what she's there to do. But the thing is, considering that Mickie and her team lost the 6-women match at the Royal Rumble pre-show, I would have expected Mickie to get a win here to allow for a big blow-off match at the SmackDown around the Fastlane pay-per-view to give SmackDown something to work towards, and then Becky can finally get the win over her nemesis. Although we still don't know what's happening with the women's title going into WrestleMania, so we don't know where that's going to go and whether these two will be in the mixture. So giving Becky that rub, if she's going to challenge for the title again, possibly, could be something. But I just feel inevitably that the crowd investment would have been much better if that was built up to allow the fans to want Mickie to get beaten by Becky instead of just having it here in this match. But oh well, it happens, I can't really say too much about it. But nonetheless, this was still quite an enjoyable match for how simple it was, as it showed Mickie's fluid yet intense style, while making Becky look good against a well-established star. So I can't really fault it too much, despite how unexciting it was at times, and how honestly you look at it and think, it wasn't the best match ever, but I will say this, it entertained me enough for me to award it 2 stars. There was enough there that I could be pleasantly happy with it. It was enjoyable, but it needed to be a little more to go into my good books, which is, of course, is 2.5 star and up. If it's anything higher than 2.5, I'm pretty pleased with what we can get. Next, we saw the 2-on-1 handicap match, with the numbers game not playing into Dolph Ziggler's favour, as he lost to Apollo Crews and Kalisto in that match in 7 minutes and 20 seconds off a spinning sit-out powerbomb by Crews. However, he did get the last laugh by crushing Crews' ankle in a chair following the final bell. Now, Kalisto was taken out of the match before it started, meaning we had Crews versus Ziggler for a majority before Kalisto walked back in limping, sold the back, and helped the match go in favour of the face team. And considering that Ziggler controlled most of the match following Crews had a hot start, seeing Ziggler break down Crews afterwards made this result not really matter to me, because when I look at this match and what it gave to me as a viewer, it felt like between the assaults before and after the bell, this match didn't really accomplish anything. Now, while Ziggler did have his aggression, and he was made to look like a badass who didn't care about the rules, whilst in the match itself, that aggression was noticeable in his movement and his targeting of Cruz's head and neck. But outside of that, there was very little that said, hey, this is the different Dolph Ziggler than what we've seen, and it didn't really play into his story that well. And that aggression, while noticeable at times, I wanted to see a lot more of, showing Ziggler's disregard for his fellow talent in the ring, rather than actually trying to wrestle them properly. It didn't make sense. And on top of that, the other purpose of this match was to make Cruz and Kalisto look like credible threats. And they didn't, because they had such limited offense. It didn't make sense to me. And okay, I liked the story of Kalisto coming back into the match, selling the back, going and helping his teammate, having Cruz at the beginning violently go after Ziggler because of what had just happened in the aisleway. That was greatly done. However indeed, I've got to say, not much really came through. And sure, I've already mentioned Ziggler targeted the head, but the zigzag that was targeting for never actually came, because the match was too short. And yeah, the pace was mediated, but still rather fast, and it was enjoyable, but I look at this match and think this could have been a very simple match, having Ziggler kind of lose it a bit. That would have made it much more entertaining, make much more psychological sense, and inevitably make a much more enjoyable contest, because I haven't seen in this bout anything that I haven't seen from these wrestlers in the past few weeks. We've already seen Cruz versus Ziggler. We didn't need to see another one. And it just annoyed me how, okay, you add a few assaults before and after the bell, but it doesn't make the match any more exciting, because the core contest just wasn't. And I've got to say, in my opinion, also the wrong wrestlers won too, and the crowd. Oh my god, they are cheering Ziggler for being a heel. I know this is a thing in modern day pro wrestling. I am fully part of it too. But the thing is, if I was watching, I would want to boo Ziggler for what he's done, because seriously, this is intensely evil stuff. And the crowd just cheered for him. They didn't care for Cruz or Kalisto. And I was sitting there thinking, really? Are you serious? I cannot invest myself in this match, especially considering that bad guy who you're cheering for lost. It doesn't make sense. And oh god, the match just didn't serve much of a purpose outside of making Ziggler look tough, which didn't really come through in a loss here. Sure, he got the last laugh, but did you really need to embarrass him with a loss to make that emphatic destruction afterwards any more meaningful? I don't know. This match was, for me, just largely forgettable, and I'd just seen too much of what these three have done in recent weeks to care. And I don't know, there was nothing new here, nothing really that interesting, and it was a throwaway that could have been executed under better direction to make it a much more enjoyable match. It's a 0.5 star rating, and it's the worst match on this card. I felt there wasn't going to be that much anticipation for this match. I know people like Cruz, I know they like Kalisto, I know they like Ziggler. You combine them all together, you think you can have something good, but this match for me just did not work. And it was definitely living up to those really low expectations I set myself beforehand. Next, we have the Tag Team Turmoil match for the SmackDown Tag Team Championships, with American Alpha predictably retaining their titles following 8 minutes and 14 seconds in the match themselves, with a match together that lasted 21 minutes and 10 seconds combined. Now, what I found most concerning about this match was that rightfully American Alpha won, but the thing is, their win was met with silence. The hot tag was met with silence. Considering they put in a decent shift and showcased their athleticism through destructive beatdowns from the Ascension and the Usos throughout the contest, it was surprising to me that they didn't get more of a reaction. So even more surprising, Beauty and the Man-Beast were the stars of this thing. They had the crowd in the palm of their hands, crafting a story out against the Vaudevillains, Breezango and the Usos in defying the odds and lasting for pretty much half the contest, and over 10 to 12 minutes in it. And however, once they were eliminated though, this is where it has its issue. Sure, that face team showcased great durability and intensity in the in-ring offense. However, once they went, the pace went down from quite quick and quite fun to very, very slow and very, 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 very boring to watch overall, which meant the crowd noise went with it, and the match, despite having some great antagonism between Alpha and the Usos, building to the match's end and having some solid wrestling in between, it failed to spark an interest to where the champion's victory didn't feel as good as it should do. And I will admit it was predictable, but it was lengthened out unnecessarily because the show needed time to fill. They could have done this better, and once the Usos were eliminated, it was obvious that American Alpha would retain, despite there being little doubt of that outcome. To have so many heel teams on SmackDown, well, that also hurt the match, because outside of Beauty and the Man Beast, American Alpha didn't get much of a reaction, and it just showed that, well, they're missing the Hype Bros, because they would have really helped make this match feel a little more lively, in my opinion, because actually in the pre-show, Mojo got a decent pop, which is strange. So imagine what him and Ryder would have gotten if they actually wrestled on this thing, in a tag team thing. I don't know, it's crazy. Nonetheless, I look at this and just think to myself, the Ascension would not have been able to do this. They won their first match in ages this past week, but it wasn't going to be a fairy tale outcome. So even though they looked great, they looked fantastic and destructive with their hard-hitting offense, which I loved, they were not going to win. And it was obvious. The match went on for a decent amount of time considering how much they had to fill, as I've said, but it focused way too much on Beauty and the Man Beast despite their hot crowd reaction, and while the time was paced relatively well, it slowed down too abruptly between matches and later on as well, making those latter stages feel like a chore, with the crowd's lack of interest being more pronounced than it should. And while the match was enjoyable, the lack of depth and believability in half of the division, in fact 3/4 of it, in considering what was actually in there, sapped it of drama and unpredictability that, in spite of some positives and entertaining moments, doesn't take it very far up my rating scale. Now, if we had some bigger, more well-built and balanced teams that have been showcased regularly on SmackDown, this could have been better, instead of a match that, while fun, was just a laboured exercise on the card to put all these teams on there. They did that with those multi-team matches on the pre-shows prior to this pay-per-view. In many pay-per-views gone by since the brand extension, this proved you need to have consistent challenges and not just chuck them all onto a card, because it doesn't work. I mean, for a match that doesn't work getting 2 stars, I'm critiquing it immensely, but I still found it enjoyable at its foundation. There was enough there that I actually felt it was respectable. But I would advise SmackDown here to invest more storyline time into your teams, primarily those heel teams, by recruiting some face teams to give those heel ones a purpose, because like I've said, having the Hype Bros absent, it was a major problem in not being able to balance this match properly. Because, seriously, if you're going to have that many heel teams, don't make them all look weak. Apart from, the Ascension looking strong-ish, and then the Usos looking badass like they do. The rest of them didn't really factor in, and, well, this match did not feel like genuine competition to me. And if you want to balance it out as more realistic and intense, I want it to be that way. It was a decent match, but with better execution and placing in the opening match on the card, in my honest opinion, this would have made the crowd go nuts and get them into the show. It would have been great. I just felt this would have been much better than what we actually got. Next up, we have Nikki Bella versus Natalya, a much anticipated matchup. However, considering what we got, that anticipation was in vain, as it ended in a double countout. Yeah, a double countout on a pay-per-view. I still don't understand why they do this. And it finished after 13 minutes and 16 seconds after they both were brawling on the outside and could not answer the count of 10. Now, here is what irritates me most about this match. This has been building since November, since Survivor Series. Nikki Bella shut down her feud with Carmella and then immediately went straight into this, okay? Here is my problem. We've had 3 months of solid build. These two women fighting everywhere. The Talking Smack set, the merch table, anything under the sun in an arena, wherever they've been, they have found a way to brawl with each other, okay? You would expect that when push came to shove in a match like this, they would decimate each other, okay? Wouldn't you? Wouldn't you expect that? The thing is, it didn't happen here. Outside of a bit of brawling at the end, which resulted in the dubious and very, very bad finish, you had a slow, mat-based, grounded contest. I don't understand where the booking in that comes from, because I would want Nikki to go out there and absolutely pummel Natalya. Pummel her. And I'd want Natalya to do the damn same. But we didn't get any of it. And the finish, especially considering that Nikki was in her home state, her not getting a decisive yet hard-fought victory made little sense. When you look at the story together, okay, Natalya was working down Nikki, while Nikki was showing she could wrestle, pulling out some great moves, great counters, and showing that she knows Natalya well, and it worked out nicely in that regard. The match did fine there, but there wasn't enough intensity. I've said the word intensity way too often tonight, because I can't think of another bloody word to say. It's that type of passion, that fire under the wrestler's belly to make the storyline feel important, okay? That's what we're missing in a lot of these matches tonight, and probably a couple more. The fact is, they needed it here. Sure, you had Natalya calling her a bitch, or I'm the wrestler, and then trying to prove that she can out-wrestle. But the pace was so slow. The crowd, while very vocal for Nikki, did not get behind Natalya's dominance of the match for most of it. This basically had the same problems that Becky and Mickey had earlier in the evening. And I understand that this match was done to make Nikki look great, and it did. It did that job, and it was arguably Nikki's best outing in a match since 2015, because she showcased her best in-ring moves, and there was a good chunk of them in there. And Nikki looked good fighting against all Natalya threw at her. And if she'd gotten the win, this would have made more sense. But again, I was expecting this match to be much more than this, because I didn't want Natalya to wear Nikki down. I wanted Nikki to come out swinging, be overpowered to a degree midway, and then fight back after being pummeled into oblivion to show she had the chutzpah, okay? And she showed it move-wise, but I wanted it more in the passion from where the storyline comes from. If you understand what I'm saying here, I really would appreciate that, but the fact is, this match was nothing like I was expecting it to, and what it did right got at its marks. But honestly, because of how slow it was, because of how long and drawn out it was, for what a dubious rubbish finish it was, I couldn't come out of this enjoying it that much, which explains some of the ratings here. It went the right amount of time if it was executed better, but I look at this and think, okay, this match did come together in the final 5 minutes, and it did have that back and forth aspect that I was looking for. So at least I've got that right at the end, after some decent wrestling in between. But that is again not what I wanted. If that back and forth contest with momentum shifting fluidly happened in the beginning, I would have been much happier. But the fact is, even with the positives I've drawn to, just watching where this match went infuriated me. And the thing is, I don't care if they want a blow-off match on the Fastlane pre-showed SmackDown event that's happening on the Tuesday, the couple of days before the Raw pay-per-view, just so they can jack up views. We've got a pay-per-view here. If you want to continue the storyline, at least not make it feel like it's a blow-off. Because the build-up package was so intense, so crazy, you'd expect the match to follow suit. But it didn't, and I'm going to give myself an aneurysm just trying to complain about how this match is. And the thing is, I've already mentioned the bits I liked about it, enough to warrant it 1.5 stars. Why am I getting so angry about it? Because I know this match could have been executed so much better if they just used their heads. I know they have time to kill on this show. I know that you need to build up a match slowly to come to a big conclusion, but not every match needs that. And the way this was done, especially considering the bogus ending, it just annoyed me. And while the match was good enough to be above 1 star on what merit it gave, which is a positive, I should not critique the match too much for that. But just everything else, this match could have been a show stealer if done right, but they're waiting for a potential blow-off a month down the line or so. Or even, 2 weeks? 3 weeks down the line? And what are they going to do in that time that really would be worth my time? I don't understand it. I don't understand the booking of this match, and it really annoys me. Calm down, Fred. 1.5 star isn't bad. It was alright for what they gave in the parameters they set themselves, but this could have been a 3-star match if they just pulled the trigger on it. On to the next match. Next up, we have Randy Orton, unsurprisingly, defeating Luke Harper off an RKO after 17 minutes and 14 seconds. Now, this review has already turned into a rant, as you can probably tell. I bet by the end of it you're thinking there's no way Fred can give this a good review. Score, right? This match should have been, like the match prior, a show stealer. It had a build-up package, it had the intensity, it had enough going with it to make me think, okay, even if they have had multiple matches on SmackDown in the last month or two, they have to make this more violent, more aggressive, and much more entertaining with all kinds of crazy stuff happening. They did that to a degree with a couple of table bumps, but apart from that, this match was just like many others on this card, a slow, methodical match. I'm sorry, I understand WWE think, okay, if we build them up slowly, the crowd will get intrigued, but the fact is, if you go at such a slow pace for such a stupidly big length of time, okay, this just gets really boring. I like Orton, I like Harper, but considering the feud that these two have had, I wanted to see them decimate each other, much like Nikki and Natalya, but for some reason, to fill up time, they restrained them immensely, and this match was boring. Very. Now, surely they had those table bumps, and Harper showcased his athleticism and energy and his impressive arsenal against the veteran, much like the match that happened prior. But the fact is, it fell under the same problems, that this match did not have the energy or the pace to keep it going. Momentum shifted, and whenever it did, it felt jarring and actually unnecessary at times. And while there was minimal psychology, again towards the end, with Harper using his knowledge of Orton to counter RKO after RKO and showcasing his move variety as it went through, there's a list I'll get to in a minute, showing his big potential, the crowd did actually start to get behind Harper. But of course, they were waiting in due for the big RKO and that predictable finish, and they popped for Orton for pretty much the entire match. And not just that, which also annoyed me, is that he didn't show a difference in his demeanor in how aggressive his actions were in the ring. His moves weren't done with as much ferocity as I would have expected. And he kept wearing down Harper in a headlock for most of the contest. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, you've got a few tables bumps, which didn't break, mind you. You had a superplex, you had a good amount of moves from Harper, which is where most of the move variety rating comes from, where you have an apron to ring senton, a rope guillotine, a sit-out powerbomb, and a suicide dive, which means even though he's a big guy, he is entertaining as hell because he can do crazy stuff. The crowd got behind him because they thought, okay, he could actually win this thing. But he didn't. And if he did, brilliant. But that would make Orton look weak going into WrestleMania. And we don't want that to happen either, do we? And the thing is, in spite of what Harper did, and in spite of what this match did to make Harper look good, which was the one thing it got right, it was just a very boring match. It stretched it out to accommodate 20 minutes of time. And I've already mentioned already, to stretch out things just to fill the time, like the tag team turmoil. I understand why they did it, but you don't need to. If the match had the violence that would come from a stipulation like a street fight or a last man standing match or something like that, just to make it that much more interesting and varied and look like they actually wanted to hurt each other, that would have been great. But it just didn't go that direction. Much like the previous match, I am slating this match more because it had 5 minutes longer and it was also honestly worse. And the crowd should have been on their feet for what should have been a show stealer, just like the last one, but again, they were mostly in their seat. Although I will say this, they had Nikki Bella in the last match being from Arizona, which helped lift the crowd in it. This one, well, they just cheered for Orton, did some cheering for Harper after a while, and that was pretty much it. This match was a 1-star contest that I just did not enjoy. I did not enjoy this, and I like Harper and Orton. Many do as well, but the way they went about this match and the way their chemistry as athletes together did not work, This match was a massive disappointment. I know this is a rant. I know this review is going to probably go as long as it ever will be, because I'm crapping on this card for formulaic match placing and execution. All I was hoping for at this point was that the last two matches would deliver. I'm hoping in good knowledge that they did. Next, we have the SmackDown Women's Championship match with Naomi getting the shock win. I know, I couldn't believe it either, defeating the then incumbent Alexa Bliss off a split leg moonsault in 8 minutes and 16 seconds. Now, before I went to record this review, I found out that the match was cut 2 minutes short. I will say, as many would do, there was some botching, there was some sloppiness as a result of trying to rush the finish. That's why the move variety is a 1, everybody. But the thing is, I don't care about that. Do you know why? Because for the first time on this bastard card, probably since Beauty and the Man Beast were in there, I was actually enjoying myself because I got a fast-paced, aggressive contest. I was on cloud 9. Because it was refreshing as Naomi and Bliss used their high-energy, high-impact movesets to showcase how passionate this title meant for them. It felt like it meant something, because they went all at it. It wasn't just a restrained, oh, I'm going to go around you, hit a move, and then you put me in a move, and we just sit around trying to kill each other with a chokehold, and then we'll flurry back. This felt like a layered contest, and considering that they cut it 2 minutes short, the fact that the pace was kept as relentlessly as it was surprising. And the fact that, looking at it, if it was only going to be 10 minutes long, the fact it went shorter than both of the prior women's matches is a little disheartening, considering that this one, okay, had less build-up, but seriously, they did much more in the time than the other two did in theirs, which says something. It could just be the quality of the performers, I don't really know. As they showed tooth and nail, went at each other, I loved it. But they had momentum shifting constantly as they fought for supremacy, with Naomi coming out stronger in the end against the now former champion who doubted her ability. Storytelling, people! And it was back and forth, energetic, the crowd were happy with both women for the most part with their performances, that outside of a few botches were consistent, and delivered some exciting near falls and good counters. And despite going shorter than the two prior matches that I've noticed, it felt like it meant a lot more to both women, and again, that this was a genuine athletic contest. It was entertaining, and this was the lift I needed. It really was. And okay, I would have liked some body selling, some more time for it to flesh itself out a little, because I felt the pace was a little relentless at times, but it did enough in the time it had. And honestly, this match could have been a bit more credible if it had actually done a bit more with the move variety too, because these two can go, and it would have been great to see. However, from what little time this match had, it did its job of making Naomi look good, it made Alexa look good and look tough despite having her being beaten, and it created something quite fun, which is something this card outside of Beauty and the Man Beast was missing. And oh, I needed it. Seriously, this was a 2.5-star match, ladies and gentlemen, despite the botches and rushed finish. Fact is, it was surprising, and it showed what can happen if, like I've said, you do not slow the matches down all the time just to lengthen them. If you haven't got anything to fill in those matches, psychologically or anything else, what is the point? If you are going to do that, these two women did that in 8 bloody minutes, so why the hell couldn't Orton and Harper do that in nearly 20? And the same for Nikki and Natalya, and the same for Becky and Mickey. It's annoying, but I'm happy that the Women's Championship match did what their fellow counterparts, and in some cases male counterparts, could not do. And speaking of the men, we reach the eponymous Elimination Chamber match itself, the main event for the WWE Championship, and to my happiness and to many others around the world, Bray Wyatt finally got the gold. And he did it, outlasting The Miz, Baron Corbin, Dean Ambrose, AJ Styles, and now former champion John Cena after 34 minutes and 27 seconds of pulsating action inside a newly designed chamber. Now, obviously, this was going to be the best match of the evening, not just for its result, but also because, just like the match that preceded it, there was good action, a lot of pace, and it just felt like a big match. And to have it come out of the show, I enjoyed that immensely. With it lasting quite a long time, it built in tension with no eliminations coming for a swathe of time, with each man getting a chance to showcase themselves well, as Cena and AJ duked it out for the first few minutes and showed how athletic they are, and in a few occasions also highlighted that, with their in-ring awareness of the chamber as a whole, before Ambrose showed his wild side by jumping off the damn thing and just showing, hey, this kind of thing's my playground, I'll whack you all over this thing. And Corbin, well, he showed even more how destructive he was, while also highlighting he's a bit of a loose cannon because he's a little inexperienced, did not realise his in-ring awareness that he was going to get pinned out of nowhere and then obliterated Ambrose afterwards because he couldn't handle a defeat, forwarding their feud, and it was pretty nice as well. And The Miz, well, he got his run, taunting Bryan and being a cowardly heel, taking advantage of Corbin's destruction to pin Ambrose. As for Wyatt, he showcased his effective hard-hitting and countering style to really showcase himself as a threat, and he often just came out of nowhere, really. And that's how it came through. Overall, though, the match actually did surprise me, not just because of how fluid the action was, but it was very well paced, remaining remarkably consistent even in its slower areas, supplementing them by testing the new version of the structure to its best by hitting big spots from the walls, on and off, and through the pods as well. And inevitably, I understand some people are angry with the chamber. I don't like the fact that the mats surrounding the ring apron area and outwards do look fake. They look like mats. I fully understand that. However, if it does mean they can take those falls and not potentially kill themselves, I am fine with that. Also, not to mention, it's also higher. The pods are also wider, so they can jump on them, or jump off them, do moves on top of them. There's LED stuff in the sides with plexiglass on the sides as well in each corner where the pod is, and you saw that being used to a good effect by having Ambrose ram Styles' head right into it with quite a satisfying thud. Even the fans agreed. I think overall, the actual build of it shows that, yeah, this may look safer and a little bit tamer, but it's still a draining match. If you put anyone else you know in there, they will probably say the same, thusly. And the spots were large enough to be impressive on the eye and very, very fun to watch, but they were a little infrequent and there wasn't a lot of them, which inevitably was a problem on my end. And while the crowd were into it, they enjoyed the small Styles versus Cena rematch that started off, they quietened down until the eliminations started occurring, and they popped massively for Corbin's elimination and the shock elimination of Cena by Wyatt, allowing for his win, while predictable, still felt incredibly sweet for that audience who just went, you know what, make it happen, WWE, pull the trigger, and they popped huge for it. They built up that energy over time for the 34 minutes it was there, and it was good. And overall, this match was one that did a decent job of showcasing SmackDown's main event scene, but it lacked in a true foundation story-wise between most of the competitors, and a lack of body selling didn't help either. But despite the near falls and Corbin's performance amongst many other things, it still had enough for me to feel that it was actually a very, very good match. And okay, I understand that the timings of the cell chamber pods were technically wrong, as a report online just before I recorded this came through to say. Regardless of that, they still did well to make up for it, and it was pretty entertaining, despite the 2015 offering inside this chamber for the Intercontinental Championship proving to be very bad indeed. This new style of the chamber could actually be its saving grace, because you'd think in the old chamber all had already been done. I'm happy they've changed it, because like I've said, 2015's offerings, while one was really good, the other one was stale, and it proved that, yeah, they needed to change something up. So if they needed to take a year off to rebuild the chamber from scratch and make it look good, while this match was lacking in some areas, the chamber still felt like a big deal, and the match was worth my time. I enjoyed it a lot. It was the best match of the evening. and it was a 3.5-star bout. It may have not been the out-and-out best it could have been, but I'll say this, it was a nice way to finish the card after, as you may not have noticed, it infuriated me quite a bit. So to have the title match in this chamber feel like it was great and worthy of my time, I could not be happier. Ladies and gentlemen, after all that, it's time for me to look at my final thoughts on this show, and I'm going to try to keep this sum up as short as possible, because I know I'm going to sound like a person who does not know what they're talking about. And some of you may think that already. The thing is, this show had decent matches on the card. If you look at my ratings for each of the matches, you will think, okay, this is a pretty solid show. It should therefore get a pretty solid rating. Some of you are going to say it's a 5, 6, maybe 6 out of 10. Some of you are thinking, it's probably worse, it's a bit lower. The thing is, what I am annoyed about, and this is what makes this show difficult to review, is that when I compare it to last Chamber pay-per-view in 2015, this was worse, but not by much. And here's why. You see, the thing is, the 2015 pay-per-view had a 4.5-star, a 3.5-star, and a 2.25-star, making the underwhelming undercard of 1.5 stars down to 0 look pretty bad. And that's fine. That pay-per-view did its job in having some big matches that delivered. I was entertained by them, and the Chamber did its job. And okay, some of the undercard matches were not the best, but they at least gave me just enough to make me justify a 4.5 out of 10 rating. The thing is, though, even though that card had a 0 on it, had a few matches in the lower ends, and a couple more 1-star matches to buoyance it, I feel that this card tonight is worse. I feel that Elimination Chamber 2017, despite the quality it showed, had problems that not even my rating system can justify. And the fact is, yeah, we got a 3.5-star Chamber, we got a Tag Team Turmoil and Women's Opener that were 2 stars, we got a Women's Championship match that was 2.5. That sounds good. We've got a 1.5 women's match that wasn't as good as expected. We've got a 1-star match that would have been a 3 if it was in a better match. And a 0.5-star that maybe shouldn't have been on the show. I don't really know. But the fact is, at the end of the day, no matter what star ratings those got, I don't feel satisfied. The pay-per-view made me question, after 2 or 3, possibly 4, quite poor brand-exclusive pay-per-views, whether the booking teams know how to make this format work. SmackDown has a good television product. A really good television product that is intense and interesting. A lot of the matches tonight, despite doing decent on my rating scale, were not that enjoyable, despite their positives. I feel very annoyed, because I wanted this pay-per-view to be better than what I'm going to give it. And I wanted it to be better than the original. I wanted it to be better than the Chamber match that they held 2 years ago. Chamber match, Chamber pay-per-view. But they didn't. The matches actually felt worse. But through what little they did, it helped them become better. I don't understand how that works. I was hating on most of these matches, as you could tell in this review up to this point. And when I look at myself, and I say how much I did not like the way these matches were executed, how they even got the ratings they got, bemuses me. Because the way my scale works, I find those specific elements that make a match work for me. And they executed some of them. They did not do all of them, but they did it in such a way that the stuff they didn't do was so glaringly obvious that they weren't, that it is more apparent now. So that proves an even bigger problem. Do I rate it the same rating that I gave the last one? Because I feel them to be very similar pay-per-views. Now, of course, this one didn't have a 4-star match to help it. It didn't have another 3-star on top of it to really go forward. And it didn't have it had a balance better of 2 stars to counteract it. I feel overall, though, it's my enjoyment that will dictate where this pay-per-view lies. I enjoyed 2015's showing in spite of its problems. It was 4.5 out of 10. That's a just below average rating, but not by much. This pay-per-view, I want to give it a roughly similar rating, and I feel like I will, but at the same time, WWE, SmackDown, and I would even dare say Raw, because from Clash of Champions through to now, I've only had 2 above average pay-per-views, which are Survivor Series, which got like a 5.5 out of 10, and the Royal Rumble, which got a 7.75. I have had mostly 3.5 and 4.5 out of 10 shows between then, which is between Clash of Champions. We had the Hell in a Cell, we had Roadblock End of the Line, TLC, and No Mercy. All of them got similar. And I'm annoyed that I'm having to do the same here. I should be happy that I'm giving this show between a 4 and a 4.25 or 4.5 out of 10. But it's happened so often in the last few months and the last year that it just is not good enough anymore. Being below a 5 out of 10 should not be as bad as it is. And a 4 point whatever out of 10 should not be bad. But the way WWE do their shows now, it makes it very difficult for me to use this in a positive limelight. And no matter how good the matches have been, a 4.5 out of 10 is not good enough anymore. You make your big 4 shows look absolutely amazing. Why can't you do the same for your other shows? Because I'm sick of seeing matches which had potential to make cards memorable. We used to have these pay-per-views in between big 4 shows feel massive. 2014 had a bunch of those after WrestleMania. Same thing in 2016, pre-WrestleMania and after it. We had a couple of barnstormers in there, including Payback winning pay-per-view of the damn year last year for me. I know I said I'd keep this short, but the fact of the matter is, this pay-per-view was decent. It was average just around about, but it's nothing to write home about, and my enjoyment of this is soured by this predictable idea of what non-Big 4 shows feel like, and it's just becoming even more apparent to me after this show that they need to change it up. Fastlane, I am looking at you in a couple of weeks' time. You need to make me feel like I've gotten my money's worth, because while the matches may be good in relation to my scale, and they're not utterly horrible, they're not zeros or anything, I'm going to say this: if I don't get an average of most of the matches being around 2 stars, I am not going to be happy. And this is a testament to that. Ladies and gentlemen, Elimination Chamber 2017 gets a rating of 4 out of 10. And like Bret Hart says, that's a bad rating. Well, it is, because I'm sick of giving this rating out, because I've given it out so much in the last year that it's kind of become redundant. And ladies and gentlemen, yeah, it did worse than 2015, primarily because of this thinking, that this is just the norm now. And while that's acceptable to some people, it isn't to me. I want average or above each time. And I am just getting sick of how tired and flat and boring a lot of these pay-per-view matches are, despite the fact they're performing the stuff I like, which then puts the ratings up. This pay-per-view looks pretty decent on paper with a 4 out of 10. Compared to most shows I've reviewed in the last few years on Friday flashbacks and pay-per-view reviews, this doesn't look too bad. But like I've said, in the future, anything below 5 is just going to not be viewed in a very good light by me. And if you think this is an overreaction, you can do that. But at the end of the day, I just want WWE to give me something more. And if they do, great. Just give me more 5 out of 10s. I don't need 6s or 7s or 8s. Or even the rarest of 9s. I don't need those every pay-per-view. But I don't want them to feel like outside of 1 or 2 matches, these shows are wastes. I have to be up from 1 to 4 in the morning 2 or 3 times a month now for this stuff. As a UK user, make it feel like it's worth it. I may be overreacting, but ladies and gentlemen, that's it. The Elimination Chamber 2017 review is done. And I apologise for this going way longer than it does, but you know what happens when I rant. A lot of you may actually be happy that I've ranted on this show a little, in spite of the rating it's been given. But hey, if something's really bad and it's glaringly obvious, I'll state so. And despite this pay-per-view doing somewhat well, I had to be as cruel as I could with that. Nonetheless, what did you all think about this show? Did you enjoy it? Put your views down there in the comment section. I'll be glad to read them. And if you want to see the Canadian Stampede 1997 Friday flashback and the Fastlane review coming at the beginning of March, along with the Fur Fighters playthrough and upcoming things, all you have to do is click the subscribe button down there. And also, a cheeky like will not go amiss as well. Also, if just a reminder, click the bell icon so you get notifications whenever a video has been put out, because the views for everything on this channel have gone down the toilet. And I'd like to see whether you guys are actually getting my videos, because I'm a little bit concerned now, just to say. Although also, if you want to know what's happening in the schedule for videos in the future, go to the Twitter link in the description, which is CC Network YT on Twitter if you don't know, and that'll have an update released at the beginning of each month with all the videos that are happening, so you guys don't miss out. All's well and good? Fine. But now all I have to do is look forward to Fastlane and just hope to God Raw ramps up the heat, because we've only got one pay-per-view to go to WrestleMania, and WrestleMania should be good. I'm just hoping what happens in between it, before it and after, is actually going to be of somewhat good quality. I know 4 out of 10 is a good show in some people's eyes, but when it comes to me, maybe now it is the new normal for low quality. Hey, I've seen worse, I'll say that for sure, but I don't think I've ripped on a pay-per-view as bad as this one, in terms of balance. Anyway, I have been Freddie Thomas, you have been people listening. This has been the CC Network's review of Elimination Chamber 2017. For the CC Network, as honestly it wouldn't be anywhere else. I will see you all next time. I hope to God you have a good day, and I need to go lie down because this review has exhausted all of my energy. Cheers!